Hi, hello, and welcome to turn 6 of Season 2 of City of Cards. As I have said to many of the players involved in this game, I'm very excited for this turn. Some intriguing things are set to happen, and some very spicy actions are to take place. Hello, hello. Yes, indeed. Now, we have just had a Congress, the Winter Congress of 2025, and the bill, which was to decide on the ban of possession of phones, has passed. We've also had a conflict recently come to a close between the group and the Society of St. Leopold. It has left its scars upon Boston, which you can see by these 3 investigations that are taking place. There are many things brewing in Boston, a couple things being revealed or discovered by particular actors, and then things being carried on to other actors in Boston. Car rides home from a particular Congress in which discoveries are shared. And the debates around whether particular punishments for past transgressions are sufficient enough has been in heated discourse across Boston. But without me lingering on the prologue of this turn, the beginning of this year, let us click and discover who, out of our player factions, will be performing their actions first. Okay, the Redcoats rolling incredibly strong with a 10, the Patriots with a 2, the group with a 6, the Custodians with a 7, the Knights with a 5, so that is after the group, and the Gemini League with another 10, tying for first place with the Redcoats. So we have a tiebreaker in first place that will need to be determined. Now with the NPC factions, we have the Boston Camarilla at 5, which will put them at the end of the NPC factions. First Light goes first. Society of St. Leopold goes second with a 6. A single tie roll-off to occur between Redcoats and Gemini League. So that will be 2 D6s. The Redcoats will be the die on the left. The Gemini League, the die on the right. And the Redcoats barely sneaking forward. As you guys sneak into chat, oh, you guys, you're my favorite subjects. You guys honoring your storyteller prince on his most gracious day. Yes, for those who are not in the know, it is the storyteller, who is me. It's his birthday. I've had a phenomenal day thus far. And I'm delighted to be ending it doing this. He indeed. He indeed. Thank you so much for your wishes in chat. I look forward to seeing the gift, which will be the reactions of you as you discover what is going on. That's honestly quite a feat, Emmer. In this times, it feels like it's getting harder and harder for that to not to have occurred. So I am proud of such an accomplishment. Now, speaking of death, let's move on to our undead fellows in the redcoats. Oh, but before we carry on, even though there's nothing to do in this, I should still make a note of it, for there are no assists, nor are there any trades occurring this turn. And I think that might be the first turn in a while in which that has been the case. So, everyone is going very, I want to say insular, but that doesn't feel like the right word. The second word that popped into my brain was secular, but that also isn't correct. Maybe isolationist in their activities, focused on the one self, their own internal doings. Crazy indeed. But that brings us to the first of our factions, the Redcoats, who we calculate their resources, gaining 1 coin. Their vault is full, so that coin probably just gets chucked into the flame, as all coin that is surplus must be. Where else would you put it? And we have a lovely, lovely little narrative to read out for the Redcoats. All my years to this moment, all my roads to this wall, all my words to this silence, all my pride to this fall. Catherine Fisher. The city stirred quietly as Sir Humphrey surveyed the growing enemies against the Camarilla. The Second Inquisition grew only more fierce as it launched 3 investigations of Fanwell Marketplace. Its nature as a kindred hotspot makes it uniquely difficult to disrupt, yet the Redcoats managed all the same. What concerned Sir Maurice even more than the ever-increasingly looming Inquisition was the quiet ministrations of the clan of Graves. When would they announce themselves? What were their goals? How deeply embedded in the city were they already? And most importantly, did they need to be an enemy? Humphrey did not know. His focus would be on factors he could control, the protection of his domains, the empowerment of his resources and networks. If he did not know what he had to face, he would prepare for it all. Hubris would not cripple Sir Maurice as it did his predecessors. He was acutely aware of how little power he wielded, no matter how bitter a pill it was to swallow. Yes, indeed, for Sir Humphrey, in recent scenes, has discovered the presence of at least one Giovanni in Boston. And an active scene at the moment suggests that their involvement in the city perhaps runs deeper than Humphrey ever could have suspected. Having talked to Aubrey on the ride home from Congress. That scene is still ongoing, so we will discover what exactly Aubrey shares about his experiences with a Synergy Internationale, and what Humphrey will share of his time with an Aria Giovanni. Their first action will be to have spent 2 coin for their Law Office of Harrison and Smith cohort to perform the Resolve event action, targeting... Ooh, that is the rules page. I misclicked. Targeting the Mortal Crime event at Boston Harbor, which is a social role, though the cohort is resolving it, so it will be a cohort role. Boston Camarilla is present on the scene, and if it is resolved, it will yield 3 rep and 3 XP. Casimir says in chat, since they didn't introduce themselves yet, does that mean they are illegally in the city? Good question. Oh, and thank you, Aubrey. Yes, I said the player's name, Aubrey, earlier. I meant William. Both are delightful entities in my mind, consistently existing from time to time. Good question about that, Kazuma, if they didn't introduce themselves yet. Well, the Giovanni, and now I guess the Hakata, since the family reunion, have always been different when it comes to the rules of the Camarilla. For they are protected by the promise of 1528. The details of that promise are mostly lost to time, but everyone seems to agree that the Boston can act uninterfered by the Camarilla so long as the Camarilla can act uninterfered by the Giovanni. Now the Giovanni are the Hakata. So, just to be safe, the Camarilla, not daring to raise the ire of such a united, essentially sect at this point, treats the Hakata as if they were the Giovanni in regards to the promise of the 1528. That's a little tidbit into VTM history and lore. The exact details of the promise have been lost to domination of the mind, removal of historic records, and kindred being beckoned to the east. So I hope that perhaps answers your question, that this Giovanni being present in the city has a little bit more complicated than your usual matters when it comes to unannounced kindred in a Camarilla city. You're welcome. Thank you for asking. Yes, the Boston Harbor event, which is a mortal crime event, is going to be resolved by legal office of Harrison and Smith. They are weak, so they cost an extra coin, which was the 2 coin that was spent, and we are going to roll to see how well they do. They have no bonus die, no bonuses being applied. That is a 5. So, just double checking, I'm pretty sure that is only 1 harm that the cohort receives. Resolve event, 1 cohort harm for /5. So, they have now become impaired, but the redcoats, as a result, yield 3 rep and 3 XP, and that event is then removed from the board, having been resolved by the redcoats. Voila! There we go. Superb, which moves on to their second action of the turn. Not yet a regular action, for they are spending a trivial boon that the redcoats have, which would usually be 1 dice if it was an action that involved rolling dice, but this is a recover action. I think maybe among one of our first recover actions. At the very least, recover is not an action we perform often. It's a very simple action. This action removes all target cohorts' harm. And yes, indeed, they are targeting the law office of Harrison and Smith and removing the harm that they have occurred over the previous turns. Very wise use of that boon to sneak it in after an action which caused it harm. Very clever done by the redcoats there. Their first regular action, I should say, their third action this turn, is to perform a disrupt investigation action against the First Light investigation on Fanwell Marketplace, which is indeed 3 out of 6 ticks complete. So, that is a tier roll. There is no bonus being applied, so no additional dice gained in such an event. And I am checking which domain they are risking. TD Guarding is the domain in which they are risking. So we shall see how well the redcoats safeguard what they see as theirs. That's a 5. Okay. For the disrupt investigation action, a 5 removes 1 tick and gains 1 scrutiny on the domain that they risk. So, first light goes from 2 to 1. And TD Gardens, just TD Garden, not Gardens, plural, gains 1 scrutiny. Now, if the investigation clock is less or equal to 1. Okay, I've just read the if-or clause in their actions, and it has determined that their second regular action, their 4th action this turn, will be to perform another disrupt investigation action. Now, was there any contempt? Nope, no contempt gain. Perfect. Just wanted to make sure I remembered indeed correctly. That is another tier roll, so a single dice. Again, no bonus. Let us see. Another 5. So, we know that's another scrutiny gained onto the same domain as last time. And we are talking about another single tick removed from the investigation timer on the first light clock. Very well. So the progress of First Light from securing Fanwell Marketplace has been hindered. We are brought to the end of the Redcoats' turn, and thus their entanglements. They are in the contempt bracket 0 to 3, so we will see. They got to pay shunned level +1, so 1 coin to the highest status faction, or -1 status with that faction. So they are losing 1 coin. But they have a couple of factions, I think, who could be considered their highest status faction. There's 2 members of the Accord, if I'm remembering what they call themselves these days. So will it be the Gemini League or the group who receives this pay? So group will be 1. Gemini League will be 2. Let us see. It's 2. It is the Gemini League who receives the coin. And the status is maintained by the Redcoats. Pretty efficient turn. Rep gained, XP gained, cohort healed up, and investigation stalled. And we move on now to the Gemini League, who gain 1 XP and 1 coin. So there's that second coin now, which was originally going to be only 1 coin, but thanks to the Redcoats is now 2. Their first action this turn will be to resolve the occult curiosity at the Boston Firearms Safety Training Center. That is a domain all the way up in the north of the city, as the Gemini League pursue their occult reconnaissance vigorously. So, because of Calling Cthulhu, they always roll the mental stats, and they gain 1 XP just by resolving an occult curiosity. When resolved, this event, I believe, will yield them 2 additional XP. And, of course, it is a tick towards completing the occult reconnaissance objective. So, let us roll their mental stat and see how well they do. Now, fortunate roll. That is a 4, which they get an additional die. I have remembered, I haven't put it in my notes, but I should have put it in my notes. 1+ die to resolving events of the occult curiosity type. So we will roll an additional d6, which I am glad I did, because that is indeed a 6, which means they do not get any contempt, and they only get the 2 XP as the reward, which brings them up to an advancement. Let me double check their Coterie Haven channel. No, they have not yet chosen an advancement. So, I wonder what it is that they are going to be choosing once they see this. And after this turn, bravo to the Gemini League for another successful occult acquisition. As I remove the event from the board. Now, we are moving on to their second action, which will be to perform a reduce scrutiny action on the Fort Independence domain, which, yes, is a 6 out of 8 in terms of its scrutiny tracker. So a wise call to prevent a possible investigation next to their controlled domain. It is a reduced scrutiny. They get +1 die for having access to the 5 Sisters domain, +1 die to this reduced scrutiny action. So that is 1 bonus die. 3 dice in total. Let us see how well they do. That's a 4. So that is 2 scrutiny reduced from Fort Independence, moving it from a 6 to a 4. Pretty effective turn, if I do say so myself. Bravo to the Gemini League, who at Contempt 1 are in the 0 to 3 entanglements contempt bracket. Let us see what the results, the consequences of their turn are. Gain 1 scrutiny to a domain. Okay then. Well, let us look at the Gemini League's domain then. We are dealing with, we will go top to bottom. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Doot, do 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 do. Number 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Winthrop Yacht Club, which has had a history of being under investigation, gains 1 scrutiny. There we go. Now we can unselect all the Gemini League domain, close out their faction sheet, and move on to the Custodians. Now, the Custodians gains 1 rep. Oop, not quite that. 1 rep, 1 coin, and 1 XP, and has a little narrative for us to read out. Something happened at the back bar as the month drew to a close. Basil rose from his crypt of an office and brought order back to the bar. His sudden reappearance sent shockwaves through the theatrical community. His first order was to fulfill his promise to enforce his borders. He had tolerated the Patriots long enough. The encroachment on the Rivermark apartments would not stand. He would make sure of it. The Ancillai Toreador had returned to Kindred Society and was going to make sure Cambridge survived this coming war, survive under his control. Now it's getting interesting indeed, Kazuma. The Patriots have recently, and they are 1 tick away from claiming the Rivermark Apartments, which is just over here. There was vague agreements, I will say, a vague understanding between the Patriots and the Custodians that the Custodians believe that all of Cambridge, if we want to look at Cambridge alone, belongs to the Custodians. Of course, the Patriots are along the shore here. and they've been recently trying to expand to the Rivermark Apartments. As you have just heard in that lovely written narrative, Basil is saying no more. The first action that the custodians are going to perform is a hunt action on the Rivermark Apartments. Rivermark Apartments is currently 5 out of 8. We shall see what this results in. Hold your breath, everyone, even though we don't breathe as kindred. So Basil is threatening with war, I see. That is a 4. And on a 4, 2 scrutiny is gained, plus 1 coin and plus 1 XP. 1 XP, 1 coin, and only 2 scrutiny is gained. 7 out of 8 scrutiny on the Rivermark Apartments. Yes, the custodians attempted to put Rivermark Apartments into an investigation before the Patriots could claim it for themselves. May I remind you that the only ally that these two factions have is each other. So, interesting allies we have here between the Patriots and the Custodians. Tensions have indeed boiled high, and we will see what that results in. Calling in the SI, not for us to take it. Indeed. Now, their second action, I am just double checking their channel that I have indeed recorded it correctly. Boom. Yep, their second action is to perform the resolve event action at Back Bar, which is a decree enforcement event, which requires a physical roll. None is present on the scene and will result in 2 coin and 2 rep being yielded. So we shall see how well they do. Now, that is a physical roll. I require a fortune roll. Effect is standard indeed. No bonus die given to this roll, I do not believe. I don't think so. Nothing. +1. They only have resources and initiative gains. Yeah. Okay. A 6. So no contempt gained. Good, because their contempt is pretty high. And they gain 2 coin. 2 coin, which only is 1 because that would fill out their vault. And 2 rep. 2 rep. And because they have sway over Delson Coates, the all-button name, when you resolve a masquerade or decree enforcement event, gain 1 trivial boon. They gain a trivial boon for resolving this event. For acting in the Gangrel Primogen's interest of maintaining the prince's order as if he was the sheriff. Indeed. Intriguing. Lucky you indeed, Patriots. You are indeed the best of frenemies. And as their final action, let me just read. Right. They're going to spend 2 coin, because the cohort is weak, to have the Cambridge Easy Living Real Estate Agency perform the claim domain action on none other than Rivermark Apartments. trying to form some legal basis for their actions, I imagine, or at least contend what is occurring. They have spent 2 coin for the cohort to roll, and that is a 3. So, because it is 2 links away, that is a 5-tick clock. So that's the first tick filled in. We are Rivermark Apartments claim domain. 3 is 1 tick. They are 4 ticks away from claiming the domain. Indeed, what? I find that an entertaining, perhaps creating legal justification for such actions or future disputes. But that brings us to the end of the custodian's turn and their entanglements for their actions. They are at 6 contempt, so we're at 6+. They didn't want to hunt again? Well, the cohort is unable to hunt. It can only claim domain and reduce scrutiny. So that is their actions. 6+ contempt. Gain +3 scrutiny. Speaking of scrutiny gain, so let's count out their domains. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, whoa. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. 8. Now, 8 is the number. 3 is the result. Club Passum is the domain that gains 3 scrutiny. What is quite entertaining about that earlier hunt roll is that even though this is definitely an action against the Patriots, it does not technically affect their status between them, because the Patriots do not yet hold control of the domain. No, that has not yet occurred. We now move on to the group, who themselves are in interesting waters and tensions, as they are recovering from having won a conflict between Society of St. Leopold, but also recovering from all the ire and disdain that they have gained for sparking such a conflict and resulting in so many, let's call them, final deaths. Collateral damage, as what some may say. 1 rep is gained, and their long-term project ticks are going into the upgrade domain Pine Street Inn, which is now finished, which means Pine Street Inn, their domain, gains a effect, which I am going to quickly just kind of put in. I believe this is 1 rep a turn. Yes, it is. A new rep. Producing domain on the map. Intriguing stuff. We will need to remove that there. We got rep and resources as tags for this. Oh, and also, of course, effect. We need the effect, so we have the red flag appearing on the top of the domain. The group has done a significant amount of development on their properties over the course of their time. And I had a ping in the group chat, but I don't see anything. Has a post been deleted and reposted and deleted? I'm going to quickly check chat. Do. Oh boy, indeed. Now, never mind. You did it. Ah, I see. Thank you. I'm on the ball. I'm on the ball. Hug and kiss. I'm on the ball. Don't you mind me. Okay. So, the group's first action of business will be to perform the claim domain action on Southampton Yard. Indeed, they are expanding their domain further to the Southampton Rail Yard in South End of Boston. So that is a tier roll. They only need 2 ticks left. So let us see how well they do. That's a 6, and they get it in a single action this turn. And Southampton Yard falls under the stewardship of now the group. Oh, look at that green on green. It was almost made to be. Look at that. Now, +1 die now to the claim domain action on adjacent domain. Quite a powerful effect. Well done indeed. We will just add this to your lair. I wish I could rename that to domain. But Southampton Yard. So I will be able to reference that at a glance, what domain you have access to and the abilities that they grant. Well done indeed. Which leads us to their second action, which will be to resolve the Seaport Hotel domain event, which is a mortal crime event, which is an additional tick to their mortal infamy faction objective. It is a physical roll yielding 3 coin. Society of St. Leopold is there. Following up with old friends. I see. I would indeed be champion that. That was indeed a very successful roll. Hug and kiss. Now, the group will be rolling 0 die here, unless they have access to their Finder's Fee. Nope, they do not have access to their Finder's Fee faction ability. So that is 0 dice. So we take the lower of the 2 dice roll. Let us see how they do. No bonus die. Oh, that's a tragic. That's a tragedy. Roll a 6 on a 0 die. Well, we have to take the 1. So that is 2 contempt for +3 coin gained. Very nice. And another event removed off the board. That is free. No, I think 4. 3. We've had no 4. 4 events removed. 1 for each. No. Yes, 1 for each faction. You guys have been on your ball here. You guys are mopping up the events, making sure they don't become scrutiny gained on these domains. Look at you guys go. And that brings us to, yes, contempt was gained. You have gained a lot of contempt since your conflict with the Society of St. Leopold. That brings us to the 6+ contempt bracket for entanglements. Let us see what the consequences are of such an action is. +3 scrutiny to a domain. Okay. We got new domain now. So more domain to consider. Left to right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 again. That's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hancock Tower gains 3 scrutiny. Oof, indeed. That is, I imagine, nerve-wracking, especially considering your past experiences with SI. 3 scrutiny to gain is no small feat. In the far north, missed one in the far north. 1, 2, 3, 6, 4, 5, 6. Do you have a domain in the far north? I'm afraid I'm not quite sure as to what you mean, Huggingus. I am going to wait for you to catch up, though, to me and be able to respond, hopefully clarifying. I think you missed Deer Island. No, I counted it. 1, 2, 3. It's a 6. No worries. Do not worry. You're totally fine. You're totally valid. Though I apologize that you're going to watch me take a little bit longer to see your answers, as the latency, I know, for you guys can be a wee bit of a delayed interaction. Now, that brings us to the end of the group's turn. And now, on to the Knights. Everybody loves the Knights. Everybody absolutely adores the Knights. Let's just ignore the shunned level. Everyone loves the Knights. 1 XP is gained. 1 coin is gained. -1 contempt is technically gained. And 1 long-term project tick goes into the ether. No long-term projects to assign it to. But the Jewels of King and Queen's Clock countdown begins as well. We are brought to the first action of the Knights, which will be to spend a major boon. And for no reason at all. No reason you need to worry about. Just ignore the Man of the People faction ability for the group. For the group now gains 3 rep. You can ignore that. You didn't need to see that. You can go to the City and Cards rulebook, look at the group, and go to the Man of the People faction ability if you want to figure out what just happened. Other than that, we are back on to the Knights, for they are spending one of their major boons, who know where it came from, to create a long-term project clock. So that is 3 dice. 3 whole dice on a long-term project clock to upgrade the Pentecostal Church's domain, to grant it the effect of +1 coin per turn. 3, 3, 3, that's a 4, so that is 2 ticks. Going to the long-term project section of the rulebook, upgrade domain is an 8 tick size clock. So, upgrade domain LTP long-term project Pentecostal Churches. 8 ticks, 4 results in 2 ticks gained. Now, there is somewhere for the Knights to put their long-term tick passive gains into. Phenomenal. Their first regular action is an intriguing one. The first time this has ever occurred in this game. Really, really fun, I think. It is going to be a Sway Primogen action on none other than Hilda McAndrews. Hilda McAndrews is currently swayed by the Custodians. But that's not what I mean by the first time this is ever occurring. No. But because of the Let me find it. The ethos, how the ethos are spread out with the knights. Yes, the math works out so that the knights have, I believe, yep, over here, a 0-tick clock with Hilda McAndrews, which means when they perform this action, that's an instant success. There's no way, it's as if it would be a 1-tick clock. There's no way to get no less than 1 ticks, and it is a 0-tick clock. So all they've had to do is perform the action. We'll roll the dice because we love rolling dice here. Sway Primogen. It's no bonus die because why would you put bonus die in this action? It's 0 dice. They only gained 1 tick, but it's a 0-tick action. So Hilda McAndrews has now swayed from the custodians over to the knights. She has changed associations, and the custodians are no longer the faction who hold to Primogen in the court and the Primogen Council. The knights now hold those cards instead. Things are shifting in the political spheres of Boston. Their second regular action will be to perform the claim domain action. Indeed, a lot of shootings aimed at the custodians. It's correct. Hug and kiss. Intriguing stuff going on there. So, Club of Odd Volumes is already got a clock, I believe. That is the target of this claim domain action. I am double checking. Yep. So we rolled here. It is a regular action, not a cohort action. So 1 die. Let us see how it goes. 6, 3 ticks. There you go. And another expansion of domain has occurred in Boston, and the knights acquire the Club of Odd Volumes. If I can find them in this list. There they are. City Center is getting real full. Real full indeed. And I believe that's all the domain of the neighborhood. Beacons Hill. Yeah, Beacons Hill is completely domain controlled. Split equally between 3 factions. There you go. Intriguing stuff. Now, let's unselect Beacon Hill and return to that. Congratulations. The knights have gained what they were missing in their collection of passive gains. +1 rep. Bravo. Bravo to the knights. Club of Odd Volumes. +1 rep. Here we go. Now, that is the end of the knights' actions. They are at 1 contempt, so they're at 0 to 3 entanglements bracket. Let us see how well they do. That's +1 contempt. Huzzah to the end of the knights' actions. And finally, but significantly not least, for the player factions, we are with the Patriots. Nervous indeed, Patriots. Nervous indeed. So, we have 1 rep, which is gained there. 1 XP, which is also gained. And a lovely little narrative written out for me to read. The horrible night at the Rivermark Apartments fire and the Congress meeting were finally in the past. But for Amber, it visualized even more the golden cage she was still trapped in. She had thought that as the leader of a faction, she could finally escape the cage. But that was false. It just looked different. The Patriots overall were quite happy about the new ruling, as the masquerade was the highest virtue. Fortunate that Amber took her time training the many gold pigeons, the bird feeders now become very useful in gaining messengers and spies. She will need them after making strong enemies by taking over the combat zone, but that is part of the future. Now they must get what they need, must prove to the public that they are still compliant kindred of the city, and for that they need to show that they can keep the Rivermark apartments free from the lashing SI. Rivermark's apartments are just on the edge, but their very first action for the Patriots will be to perform a claim domain action. They only need 1 tick, but we love rolling dice here. That's a 5, 2 ticks, and again, quite a lot of expansion happening in January of 2026 in Boston. The Patriots expand their domain and acquire a new effect that we've not yet seen be acquired. +1 dice to the reduced contempt action. Congratulations to the Patriots. I'm sure this will not bear any consequences in the future that we have not alluded to earlier this stream. Bravo, well done on your expansion. Good luck into holding it. Action 2. Now, I have to check First Light's ticks. It's only 1 tick, so that determines that you are spending your second action to perform a reduced scrutiny at none other than Rivermark Apartments. A very wise choice, considering the recent custodian actions have put it on the edge. So, because of corner and barricades, you roll physical instead of mental when performing the reduced scrutiny action. And because you are the masquerade wardens, when you perform either the reduced scrutiny or disrupt investigation action, in this case we're interested in the reduced scrutiny action, you gain 1 XP. So 1 XP gained, and we will roll physical to see what your 2 dice result in. That's only a 3. That's only a 3. So that 7 becomes a 6. Not quite as bad as before, but still on the edge. Tensions are very high now between the custodians and the Patriots. And whilst their alliance does mean that there's an exceeding, quite a significant buffer between them before a conflict sparks, this Cold War, I'm sure, is going to kick off in earnest now that such overt actions have been made. I don't think an alliance is going to be able to be maintained come future turns. That brings us to the end of the Patriots' actions. They are at 6 contempt, so +6. Let me check that. Indeed, 6 contempt. Hey, better than 1 scrutiny. That is indeed the case, Two and Only JJ. Glad you were able to catch us. I know you were very busy this evening. So, 6 contempt means we're in this +6 contempt bracket for entanglements. Oh no. You desperately do not want this to be a particular domain. But we shall see. We shall see. There's a few domain. It could be a few domain. There's a good few options. So let us see. I'm just going to go left to right and count this as 2. Yep. This could be big. Yes, please dice, please. You only just gained this domain. You might instantly lose it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I think that might be the most domain a faction has in this game. Congratulations, Patriots. Let's see if you still can hold it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Do we roll a 1? That is the question. Oh. 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 That. Well, that is significant. Rivermark Apartments falls into investigation, and the plague of investigation spreads in Boston from 3 to 4. What have I done? What do you mean, what have I done? I've just rolled dice here. That's all I do. All I do is roll dice. That will indeed have consequences. And I am so very happy that I have chosen to do a particular thing this turn. You did indeed pick the right time to tune in. But before we get to what I will reveal later on, Basil, you dumbass. We move on to First Light, who filled out their contempt tracker last turn. So, because of that, let me find contempt in SI and contempt. When an SI faction fills a contempt tracker the following turn, that SI faction is able to perform an additional regular action, up to a maximum of 2 regular actions a turn, which means the First Light is performing 2 actions this turn. Oh, it's so funny, because if the Patriots never owned the domain, it couldn't have possibly been pushed over this turn. That is the irony of how that roll happened. You are correct, Tuanoni. A very particular set of actions had to have taken place this turn for all of that to have occurred. I imagine the percentage of this have occurring is in the single digits, if not a decimal. That is crazy. Crazy. But moving on to the First Light's narrative this turn. Roadworks have spiked this past month in Boston, both in downtown near Faneuil Hall and along the streets where Somerville meets Cambridge. Of course, it could be innocent, mundane, kind maintenance, but the kindred, who all have been instructed to stay outside of the locked down domains, can't help but hold suspicion and conspiracies. After all, if they've been told to stay out of those domains because of SI activity, then surely these roadworks are not merely innocent. Action 1. 1JJ, sorry, I've been given a humble request that I use your percentage machine to work it out. Yes, my imitation machine. Yes, I think it's the imitation machine, I believe I call it. That is a deep cut that I do not have time in the stream to go into. But yes, I will use it, perhaps post, to work that out. The first action that the First Light are going to perform as I increase the timers. So we have investigation timer for Fanwell, because now we have so many that I need to do multiple timers. This is crazy. Brick bottom, pardon me, and Boston sand and gravel. Now, that gets 1 tick. We have... Oh, wait, no, my apologies. Oh, no, I've made a thingy when I didn't need to. But their first action will be to conduct investigation in Fanwell Marketplace, which was rudely disrupted by the Redcoats, but nay say, they carry on, rolling 2 dice. The First Light's secretary keeping track of all their investigations. Yes, the admin must be insane. That's a 6. Yes! Ha! I mean, you better be glad you Redcoats did that disruption, because a 6 is indeed 3 ticks. And if you did not do that disruption, Fanwell Marketplace would be now in the hands of First Light. Instead, it is only 2 ticks away. And their second action, unfortunately, did not have the foresight that they would roll so well in Fanwell Marketplace. Instead, what they decided to do was use their momentum to spread out their wings. And Brick Bottom, Lofts and Studios is starting its own investigation. We are going to roll mental again to see how well they do. Only a 5. 2 ticks. 1 out of 2 of these investigations are going better than the other. But there's still now 2 investigations in the mix. It's going to take a lot to stay on top of these investigations, I can tell you that. Now, they're in 0 to 3 contempt, so that is entanglement 0 to 3. Pay shunned level 1 coin, 4 plus a 5 coin, or lose or -1 status with the highest to the highest status faction, or -1 status with that faction. I think it could only be one faction. They absolutely do not have the coin to do this. Yeah, First Light have only got positive relations with one faction. That is the Society of St. Leopold. So something happened between the Vatican and the US governmental hunters, and they have drifted further apart. I guess Society of St. Leopold went and knocked on the First Light and was like, could we have a loan? And First Light was like, no. No, you can't. We don't donate to the church, I guess. Separation of church estate or something like that. Speaking of the church, the Society of St. Leopold. St. Leopold may lick his wounds, but in his final slash at the servants of the devil, an opportunity arose. The Irish mob was routed from its money laundering operation in Boston Sand and Gravel. The Society now has access to those warehouses and the grounds in which this money laundering operation once resided. If they can just manage to legitimize and solidify this control that they have, the Vatican may finally have a base in which to operate from in Boston. Oop, the atheists and the Catholics are arguing again. I mean, it might be pretty hard to be completely atheist and hunt vampires, but I'm sure you could rationalize it as some sort of terrorist superdrug or mutation or disease. Who knows? Yes, the Society of St. Leopold's action is going to be... I'm going to just copy and paste this here. Do. 4 ticks. 1 tick. And get that sorted out there. There we go. Their first action will be to conduct... Wait, is it 8? It is... I've instantly had a mind blank. I think it's 6. I think it's 6 ticks. How long it takes for... how long it takes for something to go. Scrutiny, investigation. 6 ticks indeed. 6 ticks. Investigate Boston sand and gravel. Now, the conflict removed 1 die, 1 point in the Society of St. Leopold's mental stat. So they are rolling 0 dice in this operation. I wish them the best. They don't get any bonus die. Only 1 tick. But progress is progress. I feel like once you know that holy symbols actually work on some kindred, atheism becomes a bit of a touchy subject. Yeah, that's true. Very valid. Very, very valid. Progress is progress. The Society of St. Leopold struggles on post their conflict. They are, however, at 4 contempt. +2 scrutiny to a domain. They have no domain to gain scrutiny. We move on to the final NPC faction to have their actions this turn. Now, Boston Camarilla. +2 XP. +1 coin. A small string of nightclub murders occurred in Cambridge over the holidays, and the MO of the killer have raised red flags with a kindred monitoring the police. Each victim was drained of blood and left for dead. A rookie mistake. The breaches have been attributed to 2 thin bloods who were tracked and picked up by the hounds this past week and brought to 1 Dalton. After taking the elevator to 54, Her Excellency Prince Hazel Iverson considered the evidence and declared them guilty. They were both beheaded the following night. The Boston Camarilla is going to spend 2 coin for Hazel's Hound to perform the Resolve event action at the Dumpling House, which is a decree enforcement event requiring a physical roll, though it will be a cohort roll in this instance. First light is present, and 1 rep and 2 XP will be yielded as a result. Let us see how well they do. They are impaired, so even though they are elite, and they would technically be rolling 3 dice, they are rolling only... They would technically be rolling 4 dice because +1 dice for elite. They only roll 3 because impaired -1 dice to the roll. Darn Thin Mints. R.I.P. Thin Bloods indeed. 4. So, they gain. Ooh, broken. Thin Bloods managed to fight back a wee bit. But the rep and XP are still gained. And this event can be removed from the board. Awesome possum. And the regular action that the Boston Camarilla will perform is the recover action, which will remove all the harm on Hazel's hounds, taking an entire action to do so. That brings us to the end of the actions this turn. So, there's quite a few things that we still need to do. Of course, we have the events this turn that we got to show you guys. For turn 7, a mortal crime is happening at Boston Fire Department. An occult curiosity is happening at Pine Street Inn. A masquerade breach is happening at the Prudential Center. A Kime Politics event is happening at Garment District. An occult curiosity is happening at Candlepins. Another occult curiosity is happening at Boston University. That one yielding in a major boon, which will provide the long-term project action or a weakened faction action. Another occult curiosity event is happening at Southeast South Burying Grounds. We have a kindred dispute at Sunco Logistics and another kindred dispute at TD Gardens. And that is our events next turn. But it is the first month. It is the It is roughly 2 months away from the next Congress meeting. So, we need to know what the next bill is. So, for the Spring 2026 Advisory Bill, I read to you the narrative that will go with it. The recent flashpoint between the group and the St. Leopold was a brief but fiery affair in central Boston. The final death tally is still being validated, ensuring that those who may have taken the opportunity to fake their demise do not spoil the data. But it is already clear that the final figure is going to cause a stir. To make an understatement, that is. To get on top of the existing commotion and to get ahead of what could escalate when the scale of it all comes into light for the Nighttime Society at large, it was proposed by Beryl Underwood, Primogen of Clan Ventru, and swiftly backed by Hilda McAndrew, Primogen of Clan Toreador, that an Elysium should be held to commemorate those who have perished. This was the critique was then raised by Primogen Jara Drahori of Clan Nosferatu that such a spectacle could be seen by some as an attempt to exacerbate the contempt that the group have already received for initiating the conflict. Delson Coates responded that any disdain earned by the group's actions is their own doing. Harold Vinnick clarified that multiple independent funerals could perhaps be hosted by the Camarilla instead of a single event, but such expenses would require assistance. And finally, Primogen Dajan of Clan Tremere explained the great potential that could be unlocked if he, and perhaps the Gemini League as well, were given the opportunity to study the collective remains of those who have perished at the Hunter's mercy. What began as a concept intended to unite the city in response to these successive final deaths has instead spawned a great deal of diverging opinions on how it should be done. The Spring 2026 Advisory Bill will be the policy for the final death. The ethos for this advisory bill is a new one. It is device. That is correct. You are seeing not two options, either to pass it or to table it, to vote aye in favor or nay against. No, you are seeing 4 separate options that are asking for your vote. Elysium for the fallen. A grand Elysium should be held to honor the collective sacrifices made by these kindred. Perhaps such a celebration could be seen as a show intended to exacerbate the existing blame associated with the coterie that incited the conflict, but actions do have consequences after all. All players, if this option is the one to gain the most votes, will gain +1 XP. All Camarilla aligned factions gain +1 contempt and rep, +2 rep for leaning Camarilla, +3 rep for committed Camarilla. The group would gain 3 contempt. This option is Camarilla aligned. Reject this sham. Any parade or show made out of these kindred would be nothing more than a sham. Besides, if the acquaintances of the final dead want to honor them, that's up to them to get on and do it. If this option were to receive the most votes, all Anarch aligned factions would gain +3 rep. All Camarilla aligned factions would gain +2 contempt. Remains for study. Power and opportunity can be found in the remains of kindred, their ashes, and the corpses of the ones not cremated by hunter flame must be preserved and studied. What is discovered will be shared with all. Bits of discovery will be shared, at least. If this option is to receive the most votes, all player factions will gain +1 contempt and 1 XP. All mystical aligned factions will gain an additional +1 contempt and XP, +1 for leaning, +2 for committed. All factions that vote for this option will gain +2 ticks towards the Sway Primogen clock targeting Dejan Sakia, the Primogen for Clan Tremere. This option is mystical aligned. And finally, the 4th option is individual funerals. We can't lose sight of each individual kindred in a single event. Smaller, Camarilla facilitated funerals should be set up for each kindred, enabling those who attend and mourn the loss of their respective associate. With how many funerals that there will be to host, however, it will be a costly affair. But surely the Primogen and Congress coteries of Boston are more than willing to contribute to such a fund. If this option were to receive the most votes, if a player faction had no coin in their vote, they would gain 3. My apologies, I didn't say that right. If the player faction had coin in their vote, they would gain -3 contempt and -1 coin. If a player faction had no coin in their vote, they would just gain 3 contempt. That option will be New Blood aligned. So yes, you have to pick the option that you will be campaigning for, you as coteries. For whilst it was a polarizing options before, this is a rather more unique form of advisory bell. Something that is being experimented on a mechanical level to see how well this goes. Yes, you can choose which option you desire to be the outcome of this vote. But your vote is a small percentage of the full Congress and Primogen Council combined. You're going to have to convince others to vote along with you. But can you be sure if they will vote with you? I'm sure this debate will be a fierce one. And you have to remember who has the most votes in this scenario. For the Knights hold 3 votes and the Custodians hold 2 votes. And that is correct, Kazuma. You do indeed gain another tick towards Spider's Veil. Thank you for the reminder. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed that, Bill. I am quite excited to see how that pans out. But this is not the end of this stream. No, I told you guys that I had a couple things I wanted to announce. Now, what I would like to draw your attention to is that with the rising tensions between factions, Boston's politics is getting a little bit more, let us say, adversarial. The actions that these factions are taking are a little bit more direct. Yes, that is correct. We are going to be expanding the actions that you player factions can take by 3 additional actions. The first of which is slander. Slander is a single turn action where you can roll social and grant a targeted faction contempt by the result. If you get a crit, you grant that target faction 5 contempt. If you roll a 6, you grant that target faction 3, 4/5, 2, 1 to 3, 1. The acting faction status with the target faction is reduced by -1 status unless they are your rival. So, we now have a way for you guys to get out there and slander each other and ruin the reputation of your fellow coteries. What fun! I hope that is indeed fun for you guys and inspires some potential new actions and ways to disrupt your opponents. But of course, perhaps words aren't the only way we can hinder each other's operations. Perhaps we get our fisticuffs out and attempt something a little bit more physical. Perhaps we go out there and ambush their cohorts. Ambush cohort is a single turn action which requires you to roll physical. Essentially, this is how you can grant other player factions cohort harm. You grant them harm by the result, and the better you roll is the more harm you produce and the less contempt you gain for dealing that harm. The acting satisfaction with the target faction will be reduced by -2 for such a blatant aggressive move. But if you are your rivals, they may be not so surprised and are only reducing your status by 1. So if there's a cohort out there that you don't like the look of, go out there and set up an ambush and punch them in the face. Now, I want to just quickly clarify with you all how cohort harm works, because you might not be completely aware of it. So, harm and healing. Weak adds +1 coin required for that cohort to perform an action. Impaired means is the second if you have 2 harm. Means the cohort also operates with reduced quality. -1 die. Broken if they have 3 harm. The cohort cannot do anything until they recover. And if you are able to deal 4 harm, a total, raise the harm of a cohort to 4, they are removed for the game and you have successfully killed them. Very fun, I hope. The final, though, going out there with words and slandering your opponents and getting in their face and beating up their minions, that's too overt. Sometimes we need to be a little bit more subtle with how we oppose the rivals that we have. Undermine relations. Roll mental. This is a clock-based action. Now, once this clock is complete, the status between the 2 targeted factions is reduced by -2 status to a minimum of -3. The size of the clock is determined by how positive the existing status between the 2 targeted factions currently is. So, the higher the status that they have, the longer it's going to take you to undermine the relations between these 2 factions. However, the targets of this action will only be revealed publicly, as in to the other player factions through the stream, when the clock is completed. So, whilst you all will know that a faction is undergoing an undermine relations action and trying to complete such a clock, you will not know who it is they are targeting outright. There may be indicators you can infer by using the size of the clock to say, well, who does that apply to in terms of the status level? But you will never be able to know for certain. The size of the clock, because of this concealed nature, will always remain the same size even if the status of the 2 targeted factions change on their own. Can we do it between the SI or only kindred factions? You can do it between any 2 factions in the game. That's a very good question to ask, Kazuma. You can do it between any 2 factions in the game. So, we have Slander, the social action in this expansion, Ambush Cohort, the physical action in this expansion, and Undermine Relations, the mental action in this expansion. But that is not all, as I sneakily add these to the rulebook. No. There is one more matter that needs to be resolved. A matter that have lingered over as a shadow of the Boston court in the Kindred Society. The trial of Sir Vale and Sir Lexington. The date for the trial for those accused of the crime that sparked the combat zone crisis and led to the quarantine of Chinatown has been set. But the kindred in the know, and those who have the position of relative power, know that the verdict will have been decided long ago. These kindred are to be declared guilty. Someone has to bear the responsibility, and these are the undead souls who have been selected for such a show. The real question is, what punishment is going to be inflicted on these two knights, Val Baker of Clan Nosferatu and Joseph Lexington of Clan Bruja? A simple slap on the wrist, indentured servitude, or perhaps something more symbolic more than anything? Nothing that would rock the boat too much, after all. These are knights who are bold enough to whisper, and there are knights who are bold enough to whisper that these two kindred do not deserve to be put on trial to begin with. But then there are those who are determined that a message must be sent, lest the foundations of the Boston Camarilla, the stability of this very city, be threatened. The punishment needs to leave a statement. Sun scarring, exile, and even execution are all being called for by certain individuals. The kindred of Boston have months to get out on the party and the boardroom floors, gather in the sewers and alleyways, and mingle at Elysium to sway Boston at large that their outcome for the trial is the best outcome. Over the course of this scenario, two endless long-term project clocks will be available. The punishment clock and the exonerate clock. These clocks cannot be completed. Instead, the margin between their values at the end of Season 2, Turn 8 determines the result. If the punish clock's value is greater, the knights will gain contempt equal to the margin up to a maximum of 12, gaining a shunned level if this exceeds the contempt tracker, with the remaining contempt rolling over. If the exonerate clock's value is greater, the knights will gain rep equal to the margin of the up to a maximum of 12, increasing their hold if this exceeds the rep tracker, with the remaining rep rolling over. Any player factions and the Boston Camarilla can target and contribute to either of these clocks using a scenario-unique long-term project action, or through passive long-term project tick gains. Oh, I forgot to update a title. That's okay. What's important is this is the scenario-unique action that you will have available. Present argument. This will be a rule, social, or tier action, whichever stat is greater. You will target either the punish clock or the exonerate clock and contribute ticks depending on the result. You may spend 2 rep to add +1 die to this action. You may do this up to 1 plus number of swayed primogen that your faction has swayed times. So, the knights at this current time could spend up to 6 rep to get +3 dice on this action. The custodians could spend 4 rep to add +2 dice to this action, if they so desire. It will be a race over the next 2 turns. You have 2 turns to get your clock to have more ticks in it than the other clock. It will be a race to see whether the Sir and Sir Lexington will be punished, and to what degree will they be punished, or exonerated, and to what degree they will be exonerated. I hope you kindred enjoy all that has been declared in this stream. Tensions are rising. Courts and trials are to be had. A bill needs to be debated on. And the SI have ever more opportunities to spread their influence. Happy New Year to you all, even though it's now 25 days into that new year. I hope you all have a phenomenal time. I look forward to the RP. I look forward to the debate. I look forward to the scheming that you will all conduct. And I will see you all in Elysium. Thank you very much.